Hello, good evening everyone. Welcome. My name is Miguel Gonzalez. I'm the manager for media and social media at the National Film and Sound Archive and a Prisoner fan. Although I must confess I've only seen all the episodes twice, which is nothing compared to you or most of you, so shame on me, but I'll be the one doing the honors tonight. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we gather on today, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples of the Canberra region, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Now, tonight, it's not yesterday, it's not tomorrow, it's not this week. Tonight is the actual anniversary of the first episode of The Prisoner going to air on the 27th of February, 1979. I was two. Are there any screws here tonight? Any top dogs? Any laggers? Remember, there's no lagging allowed tonight. Actually, no, there's a lot of lagging that will take place later with our special guest who will be lagging on the rest of the cast and the production team. So before anything else happens, I'll just let you know that we're going to watch an episode of the show, possibly the most iconic. It's hard. I struggle to find the most iconic episode, but it's possibly this one. It's an explosive one. And hopefully everyone will survive. And at the end, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Stranger Things, but I'm applying 2010's meme to this 1981 episode. Justice for Mouse. That's all I'm asking for. Hopefully we will get it tonight. So enjoy the episode, possibly the first time this episode or any episode of Prisoner has been seen on such a big screen. So that's quite a treat visually. And after the episode, I'll be back with some special guests who you may recognize from all those nights watching Prisoner at home. So enjoy.
I used to give her roses. I wish I could again. That was on the outside. Things were different then. We'd built our world together with a love so clear and strong. That was on the outside. Where did I go wrong? On the inside the sun still shines and the rain falls down, but the sun and rain are prisoners too. Morning comes around. Last night a dream we were together, sharing all the love we'd known, till I had to face a nightmare, waking up alone. On the inside the sun still shines and the rain falls down, but the sun and rain are prisoners too. When morning comes around, on the inside the roses grow. They don't mind the stony ground, but the roses here are prisoners too. Morning comes around. I used to give roses. I wish I could again, but that was on the outside, and things were different then. Thank you. Thanks very much. Miguel.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you. Sorry.
It was on when you bought it, right?
Yes. Maybe the batteries ran out.
Use this one.
Let's use this one.
Yeah.
So thank you, Alan, for coming here tonight and celebrating the 40th anniversary of Prisoner with us. So
Thank you.
earlier you were telling me how you haven't seen the show, you haven't seen any actual scenes. You'd only read a script, and there was one key scene that inspired this song.
Yeah, it was. I had the script for the first two episodes, and there was a scene going into a commercial break where, do you remember the character Mum? She was in the prison garden, and it was going into a commercial break, and there was a close up of her cutting a rose off, and that's where the song came from. He used to give me roses. I wish I could again. That was on the outside, and things were different then. That triggered the whole song, and changed my life basically.
Now, in this version that you just performed, there was a gender swap. I used to give her roses.
Yeah, because it sounds a bit weird otherwise, you know.
But when you first wrote the song, you wrote it from the perspective of a woman in general?
It's something I've always done. When I'm writing for women to sing, I tend to write from a male perspective because it makes them sound stronger. And when I'm writing for men to sing, I tend to write it from a female perspective, which makes them sound sensitive, you know. So, but it was always designed. It was written for the show. It was always designed to be the song at the end of the show. In actual fact, I didn't know it, but I found out the other day that it was supposed to be at the start of the show, but they didn't think the song was going to work there, so they tried it at the end, and it worked great. So I'm really pleased they kept the song.
Can you remember the first time you saw the song on the show combined with the credits and the actual scene?
Yeah. It was actually in Grundy's office, but my father was a stand-up comedian called Steve Castle, and my brother and I called ourselves the Castle Brothers. And I went in there and I saw Allan Caswell in the credits and thought, change my name. It meant I went back to my real name, and basically that's when my career started in 1979. In fact, my career started 40 years ago today.
Now, you told me that you've heard so many versions of this song recorded over the years, some great, some not so great.
Some terrible.
Can you tell us a bit more about the best ones and possibly not the best ones?
No. Well, I think Max Bygraves and Akabilk are no longer with us, so I could probably say that was my least favourite version. One of my favourite versions was The Living End, right? Because I had to go out and buy 2 copies so that my daughters could go to primary school with this copy of The Living End singing their dad's song. That was kind of cool. Lynn Hamilton's version's always been my favourite, you know, and in America, Patti Page recorded it and had a hit on the country charts, and that was special for me because I grew up with How Much Is That Dog in the Window and Tennessee Waltz and stuff. So, but it's just, I mean, the song just keeps coming back, keeps going around. I mean, I really owe it to the actors and the producers of the show, though. I just sat back. I did 45 minutes work writing it, and then just sat back and collected royalties for the next 40 years. You know, so they did all the work, you know.
You mentioned earlier that you remember you wrote the song before Christmas because there's a story attached to that with Lynn Hamilton.
Yeah, I don't know if Lynn's going to forgive me for this one, but basically what happened was the song had been accepted and Lynn was signed to RCA, and she was a single mum. It was getting close to Christmas and her son wanted this bike, and the bike cost $200. So RCA said, listen, if you go in and sing the demo for this song, because they were trying to get one of their artists to be on the show, we'll pay you $200. So she said, yep. And that's how come Lynn came to the session. She got halfway through the song and burst into tears, and you just knew that she was the person to sing it. And she proved it. I mean, she left the music business, started a church, became a minister, and then the series started in England, so she made a comeback and had a hit in England. That was the funny part, because no one bothered to ring me to see where she was. She had a version that she owned, and she'd rung this record company in England to see if they wanted to release the record to go with prisoner being a hit in England. And they said, Len, we'd love to release the record, but it's already in the charts. And then they couldn't find her, so they were getting all this mileage about where's Len Hamilton. I mean, no one rang me. And then when they found her, they said, can you stay hidden for a couple more weeks, you know? And then they flew her over to do Top of the Pops, and she flew back. She said, we're number 3 in England this week, but we won't get to number 1 because Madonna will be at number 1. And I said, did you hear what you just said?
It's almost a bit like the original Searching for Sugar Man.
Yeah.
The original Rodriguez.
Yeah, right. But it's, you know, I mean, I still, after 40 years, I still don't understand what happened. It's kind of a fog. But, yeah, it's, you know, it's still an important song to me, and it's still the one I play in my show every night. And you know, if it hadn't been for Prisoner, I might still have a real job. Which would be horrible.
What is the weirdest place where you've heard this song playing in the background?
Oh, well, I mean, I played the song once at Silverwater Women's Prison in a show, and they made me play it 3 times, and I was only on stage for half an hour, so that was... but the first time I walked into a lift and heard it, I knew I'd arrived as a songwriter. You know, it's like music. It was an amazing experience.
So you said your career was basically born 40 years ago tonight.
Yeah, pretty much.
But what was the impact of this song in your career in terms of your musical direction? Did people expect more of the same? Or?
Look, I've always been kind of a chameleon. I get bored easily and write in a whole bunch of different veins. I mean, when I'm making my own records, it tends to be country music, but I've written pretty well everything, you know. The problem you have when you have a song as big as that is they keep expecting you to write the same song over and over again. I remember having this conversation with Doug Ashdown, who wrote Winter in America, and it was a huge hit, and he has to sing it every night, and I have to sing on the inside every night. And we were talking once, and one of our favourite songwriters is a guy called Loudon Wainwright III, brilliant songwriter. He's going to go down in history as the man who wrote Dead Skunk in the Middle of the Road. So we're all right, you know.
Now, you've got a new album out called Mexico. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, well, it's called Mexico because I've recorded the whole thing in Melbourne. But it just kept being, the album kept being referred to as Mexico, and then Marion said, you should have a title track. So she and I wrote this thing that was basically the credits for the album. It's currently number 4 on the country charts this week, so, you know, people are taking it seriously. We were only joking. But look, I like the album's hardcore country music, and I'm sure you'd all love it when you went out and bought one. It'd be good.
Where can people see you next?
I don't know where I am next. I'm going home. You know, it's been a pretty hectic few days. We had the Prisoner 40th anniversary thing in Melbourne, and then I spent 2 days in the studio recording Mexico 2. Oh no, it's not called Mexico 2. We just and then we got up at 6 and drove up here today. So I don't even know. My diary is somewhere. I'll find it. I'll let you know.
I think that deserves an applause.
Thank you.
And we didn't hear you singing along, but that's okay. And Allan, thank you for being here tonight. And would you mind taking a seat over here so we can now welcome 2 ladies who you may remember from 40 years ago when they were known as Top Dog B. Smith and Troublemaker Chrissy Latham. So please welcome to the stage Val Lehman and Amanda Muggeton. A bit louder. Well, thank you, Val. Thank you, Amanda, for being here tonight.
It's great. It's great to be here.
The microphone's ready.
Yes.
Sorry. Yes.
You need one?
Thanks for inviting us.
So you've been busy celebrating 40 years of Prisoner. How does it feel talking about a show 40 years later when it was supposed to be a 16-episode series?
We talk about the show a lot, actually, because even when we get together, we tend to sort of talk about, and do you remember this, and wasn't that funny, and wasn't she awful, and wasn't he terrific, and all that sort of thing. Particularly her, she's such a gossip.
Me? me.
But, and people are very often ask an enormous amount of questions about it, and there's all the interviews and things, and so yeah, we're very. It's like talking about your own life in a way. We're used to it, and we like it.
We're very proud of it too.
And we're good at it.
It was such a breakthrough for women in television. Up until that point, we just weren't given a fair go because it was a man's world. It's still a man's world a bit, isn't it? But, the men were ruling everything, and we had Matlock and Cop Shop and Homicide, and it was all men in leading roles. And when Prisoner came along, it gave such a wonderful group of women an opportunity to shine. And of course, you were all flies on the wall, voyeurs looking into a female prison. What could be better than that?
Yeah.
A
What
male
happened
prison.
voyeur and a lot of people, I think.
Do you
voyeur.
remember the first scene that you shot for the series?
The very first scene that I shot, yes, was the very, very first day that they started filming, actually. And there were two actresses on location, because both our scenes were shot in the same house, as it turned out. The other one was Peter Topano, and her scene was stabbing her husband to death in the shower. All good stuff. And mine was shooting my husband at the door. My favourite bit about that was I knew a little bit about handguns because my first husband had been a modern pentathlete, and I had been pistol shooting with him. And I said to the crew, "Can I have a look at the gun?" And, no, don't open the box. Don't open the box, because the idea was she goes to the husband's door, knocks on the door, he says, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I've got a present for you." Opens the box and shoots him in the face. Bang. Like you do, And they said, no, don't open it until we do a take. And I went, oh, okay. So on the first take, he said, okay, you can open it this time, but don't shoot it. We're not actually doing a take, just a rehearsal. Don't shoot it. So I opened it up and I thought, oh, that's a weird looking pistol. I could have provided you with a better handgun there. Don't worry, it's hardly in shot. They said, okay, all right. Don't shoot it on this rehearsal. Right, first take, we want you to fire it this time. So I did a dialogue, he said, what are you doing here? I said, nothing, I've got a present for you. Took out the gun and went, and it had a little flag come out of the end of it that said, bang. So I looked at the crew and said, oh, I see, that's how we're playing this game. He said, all right, that was day one.
Amanda, do you remember your first scene for the show?
Not at all. No, I do. I remember they kept shortening my dress. Someone was there, I can't remember who it was, saying, no, we need it shorter than that, and let's put on these yellow shoes. And if I could find where those yellow shoes were, I could make a fortune, because there's so many fans in England in particular who are looking for those yellow shoes. I've actually thought about going into some second shoe shop and painting them and saying, these were my shoes, because they're willing to pay thousands of dollars for memorabilia. And if only we'd kept all our scripts. They're going for $2,000 and $3,000.
Sold one at the reunion on Sunday at auction, and it went for a couple of $1,000, yeah.
I think my first shot was me walking downstairs in a really short skirt, and I thought, oh, God, is that what I'm in for? And it was. Or I was naked in the shower. We did many shower scenes, didn't we?
We certainly did, yes.
Now, Val, you were telling me that 40 years ago tonight there was no cast party to watch the first episode. Is that the case? You didn't. You didn't get together to watch the first episode.
No, when it first went to air, I don't think that night none of us did any celebration at all. We did have a celebration, and we looked at and we saw the first episodes on a tiny weeny little television set in there, and had a couple of drinks. Yes, a box full of
What are
the
they
food,
called? Twisties.
the party idea of the party food that changed pretty quickly. I can here to tell you.
Yeah, but the thing was, we were so busy. I mean, you couldn't really drink or have a party, because the next day you were up at Sparrow's Fart and they're filming the next bit. So
you couldn't turn up with a hangover and do fight scenes on a concrete floor. It's not a good idea.
Well, we did every now and then.
And we did them on the concrete floor too, I'm here to tell you. There were no mats or anything like that, no.
And no fight experts. It
And
was
no,
just
I-
a free-for-all, no choreography.
I choreographed most of the fight. Well, I choreographed all of the fights that I was in, actually, yeah.
Now,
And I did not break her nose.
I never said you broke my nose.
Oh, you did.
Your elbow
You told the woman
hit.
at reception that you broke her nose. I broke
Her
your nose, I
elbow
remember.
managed to find my nose and blood just went bleh like that. And everyone thought it was makeup and it was real. And we've been fighting for 40 years. She says that my nose found her elbow.
I
As
kept
if.
saying, don't put your head down, don't put your head down, you'll catch it on my arm. And she did.
That's her story. Yeah.
Now, in addition to the episode we've just seen, we're going to look at a few clips from the show. So the first one we're going to see is a scene from episode 1, which helped establish B as a no-nonsense top dog. So let's have a look, please.
Now, what a lot of people don't understand about that scene, and that's but very often when they come and talk to me, they say, you did that terrible, B did that terrible thing, slamming her hand in the steam press. I said, but don't you understand why she did it? What she did was that Kerry Armstrong's character was in, they thought, for burying a child alive. And most people know that if people commit crimes like that against children, the other prisoners really do tend to take it out on her. But because of my character's ruling, like Queen Bee, she knew that if she took it out, dealt out some punishment for her, the others would then have to leave her alone. So it was all, that was the only punishment that was allowed. So she'd done the girl a favour, really.
Now, Val, how often do people bring up this scene when they meet you, and do they do this?
Oh, it's one of the most remembered and memorable scenes in Prisoner. It's the one that people sort of talk about such a lot. Yes, they do. Yeah, it's really boring, really, actually.
Now, Chrissy was sent away temporarily in episode 4, but that didn't happen before she was given a new haircut. So
By B. Smith again.
Let's have a look at
Shaved
that.
my head. And was it me that you branded slag, or was that Julianne Newbold?
I can't
Well,
remember.
you shaved my head because I was a lagger. I sided with the screws. I'd side with anyone who would help me.
I think I'm the only one of the three of us that actually watched the whole series.
Go on then, tell me.
No, it's not that. Marion and I set ourselves a target, right? We were going to watch the whole of Prisoner when it was on Fox, right? And so I'd go away on tour and come back and have to watch 10 hours of Prisoner to catch up, And you don't remember it, and you were in it. I'm shattered.
Well, what was weird is that we were all so busy learning the lines the night before to go and do the rest of the filming the next day that you didn't have time to watch. I might have watched the first couple, and then you understood what was going on every time you went into a supermarket, because everyone would come and say, oh, you were this last night and you were that.
I never watched it at home, but I actually used to, because I didn't... When I first started working in prison, I hadn't done very much screen work. I'd done more stage work. And I was curious to know how I was working on camera. So I used to actually go up to the boardroom and stick it in their video player and have a look and think, oh, gee, I didn't know the way I did that. I'm not going to do that again. So I actually used to see what was going on before it went to air, but I never watched it at home, ever.
Do you want to see the clip? Yes. So we've got the clip. Now, this is 15 years before Kimberly Shaw's Scar in Melrose Place, so please keep that in mind. So, Amanda, when your character left in episode 4, did you know at the time you'd be asked back?
No, I was only... it's a funny story the way I got an audition, because I knew an actress called Nano Nagel who they were looking at to play your sister. Do you remember Nano Nagel? No, she had red hair, just like you. And she got an audition, and I was with an agent who said, they're doing this thing about prison, and I want to go for it. You can't go for it. She said, you're a theatre actress. I said, what are you talking about? You're either an actor or you're not. She said, no, they only want people with experience.
That is nonsense. The first thing I noticed when I picked up the script, the cast list, was, my God, we're all stage actors. We were.
Well, this is what Frog Promotions, and you were with Frog, Beres Underhill. That's what she said to me. She wouldn't let me go. And so Nano Nagel was having an audition. She said, why don't you just turn up with me? So I did. I just went with her. And, of course, it was what they call a cattle call. And we were all in chairs. Do you remember? Well, maybe you were already cast, but the rest of us all had to sit in a room that went round in a square, and then everyone was disappearing in a door over there. And, you know, as each one went in, we moved up chairs. And, of course, by the time I got to the next chair, I thought, what am I going to say? Because the woman had a list with everyone's name on it. And I thought, my name's not going to be on the list. What am I going to say? And so I got to the door, and she said, name? I said, Amanda Muggeton. So she went down pieces of paper, you know, going, what's your name? Amanda Muggeton. No, love, I'm sorry, you're not on the list. Not on the list? What do you mean I'm not on the list? Are you telling me I've been waiting here for an hour and a half and now you're not going to let me go through that door? Where's a phone? Because this was before mobile phones. What do you want a phone for, love? I want to phone my agent. I've been sitting here. Look at me. I'm dolled up to the nines. I'm ready to do an audition.
All actors are liars. That's what we do best.
Anyway, she let me in there. And, of course, Ian Bradley was in there. And he said, I said, it's my agent's fault. They've just forgotten to tell you I'm coming.
Was this Sydney or Melbourne?
Melbourne? I lived in Melbourne for 14 years before I moved up to Sydney.
So you did.
Yeah. No. Lygon Street.
Collingwood.
No, that was the house I bought. I was in Carlton.
You're not at all interested in this, are you?
Drummond Street. Anyway, got in there, and Ian Bradley, who was the producer, he said, look, we might give you a screen test for, what was Margaret Lawrence's role?
Oh, I can't remember the name of her character.
She was meant to
be
be
the one that was getting off with the electrician up in the
electrician.
ceiling.
Marilyn. And they know, I know, and I knew, I knew that. And they said, and so they let me read for Marilyn. And he said, no, you're not quite right for that. But he said, look, we've got this other role, but she's only in for 2 weeks. And we want you to fall in love with the prison doctor and then kill him. I said, I'm your girl. So got in there. And, of course, Chrissy was so naughty and so funny and sad as well.
So and kept her.
Well, no, I then left after episode 4, and it was the public that brought me back because they liked her so much. They wrote in, because it was such an iconic thing. They hadn't seen women on television look like that. No makeup, a bit of makeup.
So did you have to get arrested again?
I know. Well, they sent me to Barnhurst, and then I did... Well, somebody tell me, what did I do to get back in? Well, I must have done something naughty to get back in. And why wasn't I in there for life when I'd murdered him with a pair of scissors? Prostitution, what else?
It's always a good fallback.
Could never keep my legs together.
So it was the public, really at the time when people had to get a piece of paper and a pen and write something down and go to the post office and send a letter
Put
in.
a stamp on it and...
We attracted a lot of fans very quickly.
What about when I gave birth to Elizabeth? It was the channel... Was it Channel O when we first started, or Channel 10?
When we first started, it was Channel O.
And the whole of Channel 10 was inundated with toys and clothes for the baby because they really believed that I'd given birth. And flowers, and it was so beautiful.
One of my favourite gifts was a great big box of chocolates, huge, long box of chocolates turned up for, B. Smith. So they gave it to me, and I opened it up, and it had a little notice saying, you might find this useful, and had some hacksaw blades in it.
Do you find that at the time audiences had difficulty seeing the difference between Val Lehman, the actress, and B. Smith?
Well, people would come up to me and say, do you know that so-and-so has hidden that letter that you're looking for, it's in the governor's office, and it's in the third drawer, down in the filing cabinet? And I said, yes, I know. And she said, how do you know? I said, I read the script.
Or maybe they thought you were on the run, and maybe they thought you were on the run when they saw you at the supermarket.
Yes. Yeah. I've got a fabulous story about Canberra. I don't know what I was doing here. This was years ago. And I pulled up at some lights, and I noticed a car coming up beside me. Do you remember this story? Did I tell you this? And these men, were looking at me, and I thought, oh, this is a bit scary because, you've got well, back then it was like satellite towns, of long roads of nothingness, and then a traffic light, and then a roundabout, and I didn't know where I was. Anyway, at the next set of traffic lights, they brought out a blue light, and they put it on their car. They were in plain clothes, and I was in my little Hattie Honda Civic. I call all my cars names. I'm now in Beulah, but back then it was Hattie Honda. And they pulled me over, and I thought, oh my God, what have I done? So they said, get out of the car. And I said, why? You haven't got a tail light. Have you got your license? Yes, I said, of course I've got my license. Gave them my license, and they looked at it, and he said, I'm going to take you in to the police station. I said, why? We are under the impression that you are an escapee, pretending to be, who's this? Amanda Muggeton. We believe you are Chrissy Latham from... They were real police. They were real police. They took me back to the station. They said, look, we know who you are, but our sergeant at the police station absolutely worships the ground you walk on. Please, would you come back and we'll put you in handcuffs. I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? And they walked me into your police station here in Canberra and said, look what we picked up, Gov. And he didn't look at me for a moment. He just thought I was some crim, Oh yeah, he said, what's she done? And he said, she's pretending to be Chrissy Latham. So he put his head up. Well, I was there till about 4 o'clock in the morning, having cups of tea and telling them stories. But then 2 young kids came in, and they made me go into a room with the police and telling them, don't do what you're doing. Please don't do this, because this is what will happen to you. I don't know if it did any good, but there's so many stories like that. Thank you.
Now, Chrissy and Bea weren't always best friends.
No.
They did some amazing teamwork, though. We have a clip of something they did together when they joined forces.
What's this?
This is like the Avengers of Wentworth. Oh my God.
It didn't have the tarring, feathering bit.
We poured all treacle over her head and hair and covered her in feathers after that.
Now, what happened after you finished shooting a scene like this? Did you have a laugh together, or take 2 and then you bash her again?
Couldn't do take 2 with tarring and feathering. We only had one chance.
Quite a few scenes, actually, we did where you only had one go at it.
Especially the riot scenes. Because we pulled everything off walls and threw
things.
I
remember a laundry set.
And they didn't have the money.
Actually, I remember it was the first one that the director, it was his first. So you were a very close friend, the director. Kendall, yes, Kendall Flanagan. It was his first episode, and there was a riot going on in the laundry, and he said, can someone, without saying anything to Elspeth, said, can someone throw, who's the best shot to throw that? Everyone went, Val is. So I said, what do you want? He said, I want you to throw something at her as she comes through the door saying, what's going on in here, or whatever it was she said, you see. And he said, but don't hit her. I said, okay. He said, are you going to tell her? He said, no. I went, whoa, she's not going to be happy. So he said, what are you going to throw? So I looked around and I saw an empty bleach bottle. And I took the metal lid off it. And also we had a couple of rehearsals. He said, don't do it until the take. And I said, you better tell her not to stop acting because she's going to be cross. No, it wasn't Elspeth. It was Fiona.
Vinegar Tits.
It was Fiona Spence. It was Vinegar Tits. That's right. I said, you better tell her that I'm going to do it. He said, no, I want a real reaction. I went, okay, all right. And she was very good. Fiona's a very good actress. And she always, went on the rehearsal, she always hit her spot exactly by the door jamb. So I thought, oh, that's what I'll do. I'll aim at the door jamb. So on the take, and he said to her, this is a riot. We're going to throw water everywhere. It's a one take. So do not, no matter what happens, you must not stop. So she, he goes, action, and they're screaming and yelling and what have you, and she walks in and I threw the bleach bottle and it went so close to her, her hair lifted. And it hit the knee, and it was a fantastic shot. And she kept going, but you can see she was wild. She was very angry. And I said, cut. And she came from me and said, what do you think? I said, speak to the director. It was his idea.
It's a wonder they didn't have a little flag coming out of it with bleach on it.
Now, the show was a success early on, but every success, there's also criticism. So what were the main criticisms coming from the audience or from the media at the time?
Wobbly walls.
Go on.
Wobbly walls. Oh, well, I mean, we were only going to make 16, and all the head honchos said, this is never going to work. They're all ugly. There's no glamour.
This is before it went to air, though.
Yeah. Well, you tell the story. You know.
No, go on.
And so Ian Bradley, who was the original producer, he said, look, before you cancel it, why don't we put it out to the public and see what they say? And, of course, they showed how many episodes?
No, I think they only showed a couple, but it was put out to market research to see what the public reaction would be. And they ate it up. They thought it was fabulous. But prior to that, these other people said, no, the women are all too ugly, the clothes are vile, the storylines are too confronting. No one will want to watch it. They were wrong.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've got a clip. It's from 10 Eyewitness News. It's from the week starting on 6 March 1979. So the show had only been on the air for a couple of weeks.
Hang on, before you go on, talk about critics. You were asking yourself what sort of critiques we got. I do remember a critique. I don't know what newspaper it was that he wrote, but what he wrote was very unfair. I thought it wasn't constructive, it wasn't clever, it was just nasty. So, and I never react to critics. Do you know? It's a waste of time. And sometimes I read them and sometimes I don't. But I read this and I did react. I corrected all of his grammatical errors in red. And then I folded up and I posted it to his editor. That's what I thought of his work.
Now, this clip, let's have a look.
Wow. God,
I can remember
seen
the prison officers actually coming to the studio to object in person. And of course the news team immediately said, quick, 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 we've got them down, and props bay, come down quick. And they said, got the cast down there. So I walked up to one of the male men and said, oh, hi, so are you a warder? He said, no, I'm a prison officer. I said, isn't that a warder? He said, I'm a prison officer. I said, okay, so you're a screw. And he said, all right, I'm a warder. But they said they couldn't wear their uniforms on public transport anymore because people spat at them and threw things at them.
I had a couple of friends who were warders or screws, and they thought it was a bit tame by comparison with what they had to face every day. So, you know.
I didn't ever know that. I've never seen that. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
This happened very early on, really. This is just 2 weeks after the show went to air.
Yeah,
so it happened.
I was aware of it, yeah.
So,
I remember them turning up and I remember them turning up and objecting, yes, to do.
when did you realize the show wasn't just a success, but it was becoming a cultural phenomenon? When did you start noticing these things? In the streets, in the correspondence coming from the audience?
When they put us on a Mumba float. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Oh, that was incredible.
And because every time you do that show, I remember, you remember when we went and had a pee?
Oh, yes! And the only place we could find was in a brothel.
No, excuse me, tell the story properly. See, she tells terrible fibs.
I don't...
It was a brothel, but the point is, we've been
brothel.
sitting there for hours and hours before the parade started and drinking, soft drinks, and it was stinking hot. And she used to say, I'm dying to go to the loo. I said, yes, I am too. I said, why don't we go over the road? She said, what do you mean over the road? I said, it's a brothel. And she went, how do you know? I said, have a look up the top. There are all those girls sitting up there. So said, we went over there, and they knew who we were. And we knocked on the door. Someone comes, opens the door this far, and someone says, coming. So when we went, and I remember you saying, "Oh my goodness, isn't it pretty? Gee, oh, that nice." It looked like early old Melbourne Motor Inn, I thought. All these red plush walls and everything. And then went into the bathroom and there was a bath and everything. She said, "There's a bath in a brothel." I said, "Well, I'd bath them first too." And then we sort of left and walked out. I said, "Well, just as well there aren't any TV week journalists out there. The two of us walking out the door of a brothel."
Especially my character, who was a prostitute in the show, going into a brothel. But they were fabulous women, though, weren't they?
They were, yeah.
They were just
great.
so dear. They were gorgeous ladies,
Now, we have another clip because nothing says success as having your own musical special.
Uh-oh.
So let's have a look.
Oh.
An applause for Fletch the Lech, please.
Can I tell you a little story about that concert? I know you weren't there, darling. That we were we knew that we were going to it was C division actually, it wasn't A, B, C, yeah, D division. It was D, A, B, C, D. It gets more, the prisoners get more used to being criminals by the D division, I think, is probably a way to put it. And we thought, okay, fine. So they put a sound stage in all right, but they didn't tell the prisoners that it was going to be a concert. They told them that it was going to be an extra close contact visit with their families. So they were marshalled into this tent where we were about to perform and made to sit down with their families who they really wanted to talk to and be an audience. It doesn't make a very friendly audience, I can tell you. However, one of them was making me a cup of tea, one of the inmates. Back there, they said, "Oh, my mate's in Jika, which was the heavy security." I said, "Oh, really? Why is he over there?" And he said, "So I can't kill him." I went, "Oh." And he said, "Listen, how many sugars do you take in your tea?" He said, "Now listen, love, you got anyone that has been done anything rotten to you?" And I said, "No, not terribly." "Why?" I said, "Just let me know. We can do a contract for $50. It was tempting.
Any particular memories about the actual performance? We saw you going disco, clearly.
No, they really weren't. They weren't the slightest bit interested in the performance. Not the slightest bit interested. They couldn't have cared less.
I've got to say, Val, you had the best set of pins. Long legs and skinny. Oh, that's nice. A sock. Put a sock in it.
Now, the show ran until 1986 in Australia, but it wasn't until later that it became a success in the UK. Would you say the show was even bigger in the UK than it was in Australia?
Excuse me, it was a success in America before the UK.
True,
Way before. Huge. Neighbours has never done that. Sorry, I interrupted you.
But where was it bigger? What was the biggest foreign market for the show? The UK?
Well, there are more people live in the UK than live in Australia. So that's why they had a larger audience. But yes, it was hugely popular.
What about that trip we did? You, me, Carol, and Sheila.
And Sheila, yeah.
And Sheila wasn't well. She
wasn't
last much
well.
longer after
we
that.
actually did it was called On the Inside, the tour.
Yeah.
On the outside, the tour. We had to cancel part of it because darling Sheila became ill she'd had that long plane trip and it had done terrible things to her, so she wasn't well, unfortunately. So we did cancel a lot of it, about the last two places we had to perform, I think. But the audience just went absolutely crazy for it.
What about when we arrived in Manchester and there was a riot and they were all carrying placards saying, "We love you, Lizzie, we love you, Bea, we love you, Chrissy," and they were all dressed as the Wentworth Screws or our characters, men dressed up as me with blonde wigs.
And I was actually living in England at that point of time too, and I was absolutely staggered that when they had put all of the episodes to air, the fans went on strike. Well, they actually had a huge meeting, got together and demanded that they actually start again from episode 1. And they won. They got it put on again. And I thought, oh, good, there's another residual.
And that was a horrible experience for me. The more times they played it, it was terrible.
And it had a very broad audience, people you might not expect. I also knew that Di and Fergie watched it. because Princess Diana, because we knew some people who, well, some of the fans that actually worked in Buckingham Palace told us. And I can remember also, you know, I'd be on the underground going somewhere, a chap would come up with a bowler hat and a natty gent suiting and carrying a briefcase and a furled brolly and say, "Oh, I say, I think you're splendid in that show."
What about the letter we got from Alcatraz? From who? Alcatraz.
Oh, Alcatraz, yes. Yeah. But that was the 30th anniversary. A man who had written a book about being a prisoner in Alcatraz and came out actually to the 30th anniversary. I used to get a letter too from one of the prisoners. They were only allowed 3 letters a month, and he used to send one, waste one on me. And he actually came out, and the essence of the letter was to say thank you to the women in prisoner for changing the public attitude and sympathies towards prisoners, to saying, you know, and I suppose the show did do a lot of that, change people's attitude to people who were in prison. And that letter I yesterday presented to the National Film and Sound Archives to keep, yeah.
And we thank you for that because, of course, it will be preserved for a long, long time.
Yes, I think it's
a life sentence.
I think it's the right place for it. I really do. I've had it at home for quite some time, and then when you invited me, I thought that's where it should go. That's where it should go.
Now, earlier today, you also mentioned another celebrity whom you met and told you he was a fan. So possibly one of your most famous fans.
I was doing one of those memorabilia things at the exhibition centre thing in Birmingham, yes. And you sit there and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people come through. You're signing autographs, and David Tennant was there because it was all big for, you know, they had a TARDIS and, you know, well, not a real one obviously. And I have a grandson who is autistic who is absolutely crazy about Doctor Who, and he came over and said, "Could I have my photograph taken with you?" So we went and stood by the TARDIS and had our photograph taken. And I brought it home and gave it to my grandson, who just walked around looking at it all day and, "Grandmama knows Doctor Who." He was thrilled to pieces.
Well, the year I did, I've done 2 of those. It's madness because they all dress up as, you know, all the characters. The year I was there, Star Wars was there, but they also had all the old Bond girls. And so there was, I can't even remember their names, but and Wonder Woman was there, but the one who loved Prisoner was the Fonz in Happy Days, Henry Winkler. And I've got photos of me and him, and he's got photos of me. So you never know who it's touching. I mean, now you've got Orange is the New Black. They're all doing things on Prison.
And Boy George, of course, was a big fan of yours, wasn't he?
Who, sorry?
Boy George.
Oh, yes. Actually, I did a television program with Boy George called Ring My Bell or something. It lasted 5 minutes in England. And I went on, he went, "Oh!" I mean, he was a huge fan, enormous, yeah.
It was like, "Do you really want to hurt me?" Yes.
Oh, very funny.
Now, this takes me to the next question. Were you aware of the large gay and lesbian LGBTIQ following that the show had at the time?
Well, yes. I was, because once I had to do a lesbian scene with Margot Knight, who was Judy Bryant's girlfriend. And I was inundated with love letters from women. It was wonderful. And, you know, and it was such a simple scene. She was behind me, and it was nighttime, and she just came in and started to caress my neck, cut. That was enough to drive them all crazy. So it was... No,
the first fan club that was started in England was run by 2 gay girls, and they invited me to go over to do some personal appearances, and they were terribly disappointed to discover that I was actually straight. When I stayed, as I said, I went for 3 months and stayed for 7 years. And I actually appeared on the stage at Gay Pride in London twice. And that is a big audience, about 350,000 people. That's amazing. And I got up on stage because there had been some hoo-ha about Jason Donovan, who had a photograph had been published of him in I can't remember the name of the publication, but someone had taken his head and put it on someone wearing someone's body who had a T-shirt saying "gay as fuck." And what they didn't understand was that he did not sue the publication for being called gay. He sued the publication for taking his head off and putting it on someone else's body. You're not allowed to do that to an actor. Anyway, so I'm standing on centre stage and I said, there's been a lot of wondering about my particular sexuality, just like another Australian television person. Ha, 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 everyone laughed. And I said, well, I'm terribly sorry for all the hearts I'm going to break, but I'm straight. And they, oh, groan. I said, however, despite the fact I do not share your sexuality, I share your outrage at being discriminated against because of it. And that is why I'm here. And boy, you should have heard the cheer. Yeah. And I came off, and Ian McKellen said to me, don't you say all the right things. Oh. So then Ian McKellen and Michael Cashman, who used to be in EastEnders, used to think it was terribly funny to get me in the Stonewall. You know what Stonewall is? Well, Michael Cashman, Ian McKellen and Michael's boyfriend Paul started the UK chapter of Stonewall, which is the gay rights activist group, and they used to think it terribly funny to get me in the thing, pulling beers for everybody, which I happily did 2 years running, yes.
But of course, Of course, the first gay icon in our show was Carol Burns. Dear God, she's no longer with us. It doesn't seem possible, does it? Mm. But playing Frankie Doyle, and she was magnificent.
She was fabulous, yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible that both she and Sheila have gone. Judy McBurney left us just a couple of months ago.
And
Judith McGrath.
Yeah.
Who else? Well, Sheila, of course.
We've lost an awful lot of our cast, unfortunately.
Yes. And Gerda Nicholson was one of the prison governors.
Yeah. Sheila, of course, as you said, yes.
Thank you, because that was going to be my final question. I just wanted to have a moment to remember all of the cast members who are no longer with us, and I think you've just done that.
Yeah, such a lot, because we were going to do that, and actually Jane Clifton was going to say, oh, we'll mention them all, and I went, you haven't got time. There's so many of them.
I mean, the beautiful man who impregnated me. How did I get pregnant in an all-female prison? I mean, not me, Amanda, me, Chrissy Latham. And I had a theory that I must have backed up to the bars and he must have put it through the bars because there was never... It just turned up. Chrissy Latham is pregnant.
What about my baby?
What about my baby, babe? What about my baby? And of course, once I had the baby, that's all I said. And then when you're with Fiona Spence, who was Vinegar Tits, whenever you see her, she always says, what does she say? She walks into a room and says, stop that, what's going on here? Yeah. And this is not a holiday camp.
Amanda, you just told me a story how you met baby Elizabeth 30 years later.
Yes. When I first gave birth to Elizabeth, the producer and his
not
wife...
when she did, she means Chrissy.
You know what I mean. So we needed a very tiny baby, and it so happened that Ian Bradley and his wife Annie Lucas had just had a brand new baby. But what you didn't know is that it was a little boy, it wasn't a little girl. And then as the baby got bigger, they brought in the designer, Ian Costello, the designer of the sets and everything, and he had twin girls, and they both had my curly hair. Underneath all this, it's still curly. I've just gone a different way for a bit. And so it was wonderful. We had twins, so that if one had wet itself or was crying and screaming, bring in the other one, you know. They were gorgeous. But I did a voiceover, that's the story, isn't it? And I walked into a voice studio in Sydney, and this boy came up and he said, I bet you don't know who I am. I said, no, I don't know who you are. Who are you? He said, if I told you I was baby Elizabeth, would you believe me? He was 30.
Lucas Bradley.
Now, I've talked too much, and it's time. It's what you've been waiting for. It's question time from the audience. But please wait for the microphone before you start speaking. Otherwise, you'll be sent to the pound with no privileges for a decade. So, okay, who's got a question?
What happened to these two people in the front here? They disappeared very And you're all going home. Are you hungry? Have you got a bus to catch?
Where's the microphone?
It's at the back there.
Hi,
Oh,
my
right.
name's
Okay,
Matt.
go.
Thanks, guys. I love Chrissy. But my question's actually for B. So B left at about episode 400, and we didn't see her again. But about a year or so later, she died. And I was just wondering if you could tell us about that.
I happen to know why, because I had a mole in the script department. Gorgeous Andrew Kennedy was a close friend of mine. And apparently they did ask me to go back to the show, and I said no. And they got sick to death of fans and things writing in and saying, you know, is B ever coming back? Or when is she coming back? And I said, okay, we're going to kill her. So I was just walking down the street one day and someone, because I didn't watch it after I left, not 1 second. And someone said, you died last night. So I said, really? You know, so, oh, in Prisoner. Oh, did I? Yeah. They just decided to kill her so that people couldn't keep asking if I was going to coming back. Yeah. They just wiped her out.
But with Chrissy, we were used to having her sent to Bankhurst and then coming back. And one day she went to Bankhurst and never came back. So what do you reckon happened to Chrissy?
I went into theatre. Yeah, it was. I mean, Prisoner really did launch my theatre career, mainly because of steaming. I had done fringe theatre a lot, acting in La Mama and the Pram Factory, the Why Not Theatre. I mean, they're no longer there. La Mama is still there, but up until that point, I you know, Melbourne Theatre Company eluded us all, and then I was seen by Rodney Fisher playing Chrissy Latham, and he was looking for a Cockney slut. To play Josie in Steaming. And he'd never watched Steaming before, but he was forced to watch it by some friends in Perth. And he said, who's that? That girl, she's perfect for Josie. She's got a perfect Cockney accent. And all he could remember is that I had a da-da-da-da-da-da name, you know, lots of syllables. And so they chased me and found me, and that's how I got into Steaming, and that was the start of a very big theatre career.
Isn't he a wonderful director?
The best.
Sensational. Because the first play that I did, when I actually left Prisoner to go into a play that Rodney also directed, called Trafford Tansy.
Amanda, you had a storyline that you wanted to suggest for Wentworth related to Chrissy and Chrissy's...
What happened to me? Well, no, I mean, they were very good to me, Grundy's, because I then, you know, started... The Melbourne Theatre Company offered me a play called Privates on Parade. I didn't know, a slut, yeah.
There's a lady over there that wants to ask a question. She looks like she's wearing a prisoner uniform, actually. She is!
Oh, my goodness. Oh,
my goodness.
Oh, come up here.
Aki Doyle.
Come on, please come up. Oh, this is brilliant.
Oh, my God, look at you.
Yay, well done. Are you Frankie?
Yeah, Frankie, Lizzie, B.
Oh, no. Oh, fantastic.
What would you like to know?
We just wanted to know, do you watch Wentworth, or what do you think of Wentworth?
I was actually given the platinum version Foxtel so I could watch it. Because they said to me, we all went to, well, a whole lot of us, about 6 of us went to the promo when they, you know, were advertising that it was about to go to air, and showed us the first couple of episodes. And they got to do all kinds of stuff we weren't even allowed to touch. I had to beg to be allowed to swear, you know.
And I like the first episode because someone in a cell somewhere sang on the inside in the first episode of Wentworth, which is very cool.
So we were aware of it, and Brian Walsh, who was the head of drama, said to me, "You're going to watch it, Val?" I said, "Well, I can't afford. I'm not working at the moment. I can't afford Foxtel." So he said, "I'll give you the tapes," and I said, "The tapes?" So he gave me the platinum versions. But then I watched about sort of 4 weeks of it, and then I went away for a year and a half touring in the musical Grease. So I didn't really see it after that.
No, I think it's got brilliant production values. And they look fantastic. I mean, the lighting is brilliant, and I love their turquoise outfits. Why didn't I have turquoise?
I think it's fantastic that Pamela Rabe last year at the Logies actually referenced the original cast. Because put it this way, if we hadn't done a good job, they wouldn't have been here and doing that show. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's got the next question? Okay, gentleman at the front. Oh, sorry. Okay, so you next, and then the gentleman at the front, and then the lady at the back.
I'll tell you what, I'll share my microphone with you because you've tried twice. Go on.
That's fine. Mine's more wanting to share a memory rather than a question. You may recall a lady by the name of Maura Fay, who, of course, is added to the list of those who are...
Maura Fay. Casting.
Yes,
she
of course,
started in
yes.
wardrobe.
She started off as an office girl at Grundy's.
That's correct, and she ended up casting for
Yes, not
Prisoner.
just casting. She's a wonderful casting director, yes.
Exactly, and I was fortunate enough to attend the 200th episode party of Prisoner in Melbourne with a gentleman by the name of Thomas Greer, who was head of publicity for Grundy's way back then.
Tom Greer?
Tom Greer.
Tom Greer.
The publicity. And of course Maura ended up moving from Melbourne after casting for Prisoner and ending up as head of casting for the Grundy organisation.
And she now she passed away, as you know. But her sister, Anne Fay,
correct.
There is still Maura Fay and Associates.
Maura Fay.
And she casts all the big films now.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Are you related?
No, but I was a very dear friend of Maura's.
She was a darling.
And I worked with Grundy's in Sydney in publicity. Yeah.
What's
in
her
1981,
name?
all those years ago, while Prisoner was happening. And you're quite right in that it was very, very highly thought of in America. We used to have phone calls coming into the Sydney office, into the publicity, from people in America who could not wait for the next episode, who would be pleading with us to pull out the script and could they please know what was going to be happening in the next episode before it happened. It was a very, very highly thought of show, and it's been a pleasure listening to you tonight and recalling all those memories from years ago. Thank you.
That's very sweet.
Thank you. The next question at the front, please.
I'm going to share my microphone with you.
Thank you very much. Lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for coming. Me and my 3 sisters, some other people in the audience might relate to this. When we were kids, it was number 96 and Prisoner that, you know, if you were too young, you weren't allowed to watch. So we used to sneak under the dining room.
And under the dining room, I've heard looking over the back of the sofa so many times.
Yeah, and we'd watch the television program and, you know, Mum never knew. But the 2 questions I've got, I'm just curious, because a show like Prisoner, I would have expected that it would have opened doors in the film industry for you. I'm just curious to know, did you get offered film? And the other question is, do you still get royalties from Prisoner?
I do. He does, she does, I don't.
I do not. I only get, I get royalties for the DVDs. And I am the only actor in the world that does.
Yeah, and I actually don't get royalties for the DVDs because when we signed the contract with Grundy's back in 1979, they didn't have DVDs.
No, because you see, there was a clause in the contract that said basically that you sign your life away to all future developments. And I said, no, I bloody don't. How do you give away something that does not exist yet? I won't do it. And my agent said, oh, Val, don't make waves. This is really great, your greatest opportunity. I said, I'm not signing that clause. She crossed it out, initialed it, I initialed it, and also my agent wrote a letter to Grundy's covering it. And Grundy's accepted it. And so years later, when the first video came out, they got in touch with me and said, we'd like you to do some promo. And I went, what for? I've seen videos. I said, oh, wonderful. I said, how are you paying me for those? He said, no, we don't have to. It's covered in your contract. I said, want to bet? He said, oh, well, send me a copy of it. I said, oh, please, go rummage in your filing cabinet. Try October 1978. And they came back and went, oh, my God, we've already made them. So they had to give me a percentage of the sales.
We were all naive. The rest of us had no idea.
Not only that, not only naive, I actually advised everybody to do what I had done.
Yeah, you did.
The next time the contract came along, because I know a little bit about legal contracts, I had set a precedent.
But we'd already signed.
And they all, no, the next contract, you shouldn't have signed that. You should have crossed it out. Nobody did.
We were scared. We were young and
which
so
is probably
grateful.
very lucky to me, because there wouldn't have been enough money to go around if I had to share it.
But we didn't ever get residuals. I mean, it was shocking because I remember what our contract said, if it was shown more than 3 times, they had to pay us. And it has gone around the world into how many countries, and it's been played here over.
Well, I actually
fought
for the third showing in the UK. And we did get paid for it. But
I've
I had
only
to
ever
come
made.
And I was back in Australia by then. And of course I know the contract inside out. And I said, you know, to Equity, you've got to fight for this. And we actually did get paid for that third showing in the UK.
I think the most I've ever had is a cheque for $150, and then I got another one for $52. That's
well,
all
I
I've
remember
ever had
Jane
out of it.
Clifton got in touch with me. I said, I've just had a cheque for flooded. Was that you? And I said, yep. But then Equity just got really bored with the whole situation and wouldn't fight for us, unfortunately.
I once signed a contract for the universe. Seriously,
The universe?
a publishing contract for the universe, and I said, "What's that?" But they were bouncing stuff off satellites, and they figured that that they'd get in quick before the technology happened.
Yeah,
but anyway,
they'll try it on. They will.
Yeah.
Producers.
Unfortunately, time is our enemy tonight, so we've got 2 more questions. One, the lady at the back, and second, the gentleman here.
Hi, I am a huge fan. I'm just shaking. I'm so excited. I just wanted to... I was stuck. I didn't know what to ask you. I was just so nervous. I thought
You just want to talk to us, we know.
Really, I did,
Yeah.
I thought of something just before when you were speaking about Foxtel. I just wanted to share a couple of things with you. I was about 13 when I first started watching Prisoner. I wasn't allowed to watch Prisoner. We used to sort of line up when Mum and Dad went out, you know, to sort of watch it at 8:30 on Channel 10 or whatever was on. And in those days, you know, the themes, the lesbian themes and the drugs, and I could understand why we weren't allowed to watch it. So later on, I watched it a lot on Foxtel. I watch it all the time, like sometimes every night on Foxtel. The acting is just incredible. I get lost watching you two. Like, it's almost like you're my family. It's just ridiculous. It's just, I can't describe it. But watching it, the first time I watched it as an adult compared to a 13-year-old was... I just burst out laughing. You know, sometimes it was just so serious when I was younger, and it was just, you know, the themes were just so different as an adult, because it was really scary as a 13-year-old, and then I just saw it differently. But basically, yeah, with the Foxtel, is it the same with the royalties? I just thought of that question before, and my final question is: are you taking photographs tonight? I used to be a model. I've done a little bit of TV work, and I would absolutely love a photo with you too.
Of course you can have a photo with us.
Of course you can, yes, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, what, with us?
Yeah, why not come down? Let's do it now.
Well, we should
and in
do
the
it
meantime,
afterwards.
Can
You're
you
mad,
raise
they'll
your
all
hand?
want to do it.
Do it afterwards. Do it
Raise your
afterwards.
hand. Okay, we'll
because
do it
otherwise it will
afterwards.
get out of hand.
Yes. Raise your hand if you were not allowed to watch the show back then. Now, the question is the gentleman here in the 3rd row, please. Just please wait for the microphone.
Well, actually, I have another favour to ask. Not necessarily a photo, but you were talking about DVDs, and I am the proud owner of 2 box sets, and perhaps having helped
What, the original big box set?
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's not a box set. The original box set came in a metal box.
Oh,
this
right,
big.
right.
And I signed every single DVD that went in them.
Oh, I was just wondering if you'd mind doing me a favour and signing the cover of these.
That's entirely up to our host.
Sure. Okay.
Let's have one final question then, because that didn't count as a question. So, question?
The trouble, let me tell you something. The trouble with a large number of people like this signing is the amount of time it takes. If we signed everybody's, we will be here until tomorrow. It just isn't possible. I'm awfully sorry. It just isn't.
One final question?
The question I've got, did you actually find any of the episodes you had to do confronting in any way for its time? Because I know a minute ago you mentioned who was actually allowed to watch it when they were younger and who wasn't. I was to a certain point, except my mother stopped me watching it at the point where Jock Stewart used to terrorise Judy. That then my mother put a stop to me watching it, and with Judy being raped. So I just wonder if either of you actually found any particular parts of the show confronting yourself.
I did find the freak really... It was very menacing when she used to put on the black leather gloves and
she never came near me with her black leather gloves. Yeah, I tell you what, we had a new producer come in, and there was a scene with Colette Doreen, and she's facing the mirror, and I'm standing behind her, and the freak comes in and does the full search, and you see her put the glove on and then go down, and the camera goes down, but you never ever actually see where it goes, because then it shows what happens to her face. And he said, this was John McRae, not my favourite producer, and he actually said, we got a message, and I think that Kendall might have actually shot that one as well, filmed it, and the director came, we got a thing saying they are going to reshoot, it was too pornographic. Pornographic! So I rang him and said, John, pornography is designed to excite, did it excite you? Anyway, he said, we're reshooting it, and that's that, Val. So, because I was in the scene, and we reshot it, and exactly the same way it was done the first time. And he didn't ask us to do it again. But I thought, you know, he was trying to pretty up a show that really didn't need or could support being prettied up. Something you said about the drug themes a minute ago reminded me. I think that my role in that show was worthwhile just for the number of young people that contacted me and said, because of your influence, I will never touch drugs, or I gave up drugs. And I figured if that was true of just one person, I was very proud of the show, yeah.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. So do you have any closing remarks? Any final comments?
Thank you,
no, thank you for
loving
coming.
it so
Yeah.
much and being
thank
so
you for
loyal.
loving the show, supporting it for so long. Yeah.
And at the end, can please no one say, I used to love your song when I was a little girl, because I was like 26 when I wrote it. Okay.
So thank you to our guests, Allan Caswell, Amanda Muggeton, and Val Lehman. Thank you also to Fremantle Media, who kindly allowed us to show the episode we saw tonight, and Channel 10 for that clip from 10 News. And of course, the audience, thank you for being here. And good night.